And with that, with the housekeeping out of the way, I just want to thank all of you for being here. All of us are really excited to see so many new faces, and we're excited to share our story. Just off the top of the bat, for those who don't know, I'm Andrew Gribben. I am the Aging in Place Coordinator at the Montpelier Senior Activity Center. And I started in mid-September, so just came on board a few months ago, and have really, one of the highlights of my time has been working on this village project. Again, exploring the community needs, and I grew up in Montpelier, so it's an added bonus for me to really try and give back to the community that's treated me so well over the years. So with that, just a quick introduction, I'll turn it over to Andrea. She is a member of the Montpelier Village Work Group, who we'll hear about in a little bit. And Andrea, take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everybody. It's fun to see new faces. It's also fun to see some people I haven't seen in a while, if only here on the screen. Yeah, as Andrew said, we're all really excited to have gotten to this place in our development of this idea. Some of you who are on this Zoom meeting are some of the folks who were part of some of the early versions of this discussion. And that's kind of how I got involved. Erica and some other folks, we were all part of a discussion group way back in like 2017, about 100 years ago. And we were having conversations about how we wanted to age and how we wanted to adjust our lives so that we could age well and age gracefully and comfortably and all of that. And out of that grew, partly by Erica introducing us to the idea of a village, which had been going for a while. It started, I guess, in Europe, but came over here to the United States and originated in Boston. And we were all really interested in that. So after the original discussion group ended, a little group started meeting pretty much on a monthly basis for almost 2 years, talking about how we could bring this idea to Montpelier. And I was particularly interested because I am the caregiver for my mom, and doing that work has really made me think really hard about what do I want to do, what do I want to have available for her, and what do I want to have available for myself. So I'm very I have a strong self-interest in this whole concept that we could have something like the village in Montpelier. So, and I'm supposed to hand it off to Polly. So Polly, you're up next.
Hey, well, I'm Polly Nickel, and like Andrea, I was part of conversations a few years ago around aging and challenges of aging and what we can do. And as Andrea said, Erica brought up the idea of a village, and it just seemed like we could do that in Montpelier. So I've been with this working group ever since, and it's so exciting to finally be able to talk about it with other people. And I'm going to hand it off to Mike.
Yeah, I'm Mike Harris. I moved to Montpelier summer of 2017. I was involved with my wife on some of the successfully aging discussions, and then this working group worked out of that. And similar has been said. My wife and I had parents that went through some of the aging, struggling to stay in their homes, some of the challenges that got me thinking about that. And it was certainly something we've been aware of as we're looking to make our permanent home in Montpelier. I'm interested in this concept because although there's models we can draw from, it's very much local and community based. So it's something that's very easy and discreet to get involved with at the local level. You know, it helps us become remain our independence and help eliminate isolation. You know, it's kind of a simple, discrete approach that's reproducible and has resources, and it's a great combination now with the Montpelier scene. I think it's got a lot of great potential, and I thank everyone for participating today and learning more about it. I think with that, I'll pass it off to Jean.
Hi, I'm Jean Kern, and I was in the second cohort of the Successful Aging discussion. and heard that there were a couple people from the first cohort that were already working on the village. And I was very much interested in that and wanted to learn more and be a part of it. And as it turned out, they wanted to speak with me as well, because by day I work for Central Vermont Council on Aging with the Community Services Department that includes our various volunteer programs. And what I really like about the village model is that it is much more of a grassroots model, and it's much more of a local approach of neighbors helping neighbors. And I think it has, that those foundations give it a much better chance of success. And of course, then the connection with the Montpelier Senior Activity Center, which is already such a great rich resource in the community and has a great reputation and standing in the community, that it's great to be able to build on that and to work with them. And with that, I believe I turn it over to Jana now.
Thanks, Jean. I'm just so thrilled to see a great turnout tonight, and it's been a great privilege for me to work with this work group and to have Andrew come on board to our team this fall has been incredible to see this making progress. I first heard about the village model maybe 5 years ago, and then attended a conference at the Elks Club a few years ago that several others in this Zoom were at, where we were talking with AARP and a bunch of interested people about how we could bring this to Montpelier someday, perhaps. And so it's exciting to see that this is starting to move forward. I've been the director at the Senior Activity Center for close to 10 years now, and working in the field of aging closer to 20 years, and started actually as a colleague of Jean's at the Central Vermont Council on Aging. So I've long had an interest in successful aging and supporting community connection through the aging process. I love working in the city where I live, Montpelier. I think there's such a robust and talented and generous community that we have here. And I'm excited to be a part of helping this move forward and to welcoming all of you. I forgot that I'm going to hand it off now to Erica. Sorry, Erica.
Thank you. As you've heard from others, and I think like many of us, this is not a entirely selfless endeavor on my part. In a past life, I did work for a living, and a lot of that work that I did was in the world of aging and disabilities. But I have to say that it all became a lot less theoretical for me towards the end of my father's life. He lived to be in his 90s, and I learned how much support he needed, and he was able to stay in his own home, but with a lot of support. And then one day a little light bulb went off, and I realized, well, you know, at some point that was going to be me. So that led me to join the successful aging discussions that you've heard about from others. And as you've heard, that led to the creation of the Montpelier Village Work Group. So I am going to talk first about the village model, and then I'm going to talk about the work group and the work we've done and how we got to this point. And just a reminder to anybody who might not be muted, if you could mute yourself, and that is probably on the lower left of your screen. So the first village was started in the Beacon Hill neighborhood of Boston in 2001 by a group of energetic and committed seniors who wanted to be able to stay safely and independently in their own homes and in their community as they grew older. And the model that they created has since inspired many other communities around the country. So we're really part of a grassroots village movement. And I think the latest statistics, as Andrew told us recently, is that there are 280 villages in operation in the country and 70 more in development. And in 2019, the first 2 villages opened in Vermont. Lamoille Neighbors, that I believe serves Hyde Park and Morrisville, and Mount Mansfield villages that serves Cambridge, Underhill, and Jeffersonville. And at some point there was a third group in Huntington that was thinking about creating a village. I don't know what happened with that. So a village is not a physical place. Villages are grassroots, member-driven organizations that are an organized network of volunteers and trusted service providers who offer support and services to the members of the village so they can remain active and socially connected and safe and independent in their homes and communities as they age. Villages typically provide things like light home maintenance and repair services, help with household tasks and chores, transportation, help with grocery shopping and errands, simple technology assistance, reassurance calls and friendly visits at home, and also social and recreational opportunities to reduce isolation, like classes and outings and informal get-togethers. Structurally, many villages have paid staff, although some do operate or run all by volunteers. Most villages have some kind of membership fees, and they're usually fee scales that have a sliding fee scale or some mechanism so that it's affordable to everybody. Most villages are freestanding nonprofits. Some are affiliated with senior centers, although as we learned, apparently not a lot. And there's a saying in the village movement that if you've seen one village, you've seen one village. And that's because in keeping with the grassroots member-driven model, villages respond to the needs of their own communities. So they vary in the services and the benefits that they offer. Volunteers are really at the heart of the village movement, and it's really about creating a culture of community where neighbors help older neighbors. And volunteers come from across the community and ideally from all ages. We have heard from other villages that many volunteers are younger seniors who don't yet need services and have the time available to them so that they can volunteer. And for needs that volunteers can't meet, many villages provide referrals to screened service providers. And these are generally tradespeople like electricians or plumbers or snow removal services. And often those service providers provide discounts to village members. So the Montpelier Village Work Group, you've heard from others about this discussion group. And I did know something about the village model and brought it to the group. And we know that Vermont has an aging population. Montpelier in particular has a growing aging population and also a great sense of community. So we thought it would be a really good fit here. So at the start of 2018, in keeping with the grassroots member-driven model, some of us formed a work group to explore this idea. And at some point, I think there may have been as many as 10 of us, and there are a few people I'm happy to see here tonight who were part of that, a part of our work group at some point. And we are now down to 5 very determined and perhaps stubborn work group members who've hung on. There's a national organization called the Village to Village Network, which is an umbrella for all of the villages in the country. It provides technical assistance and links villages to each other. So we joined the network and we really immersed ourselves in the village model and learned about services that villages offer and the many different ways that it's been implemented. And we've really been at it ever since. As part of our research, we communicated with other villages around the country and in Vermont, including some that are affiliated with senior centers. And locally, we convened a meeting of service providers and community partners to present the findings from our survey and to get their input and feedback, which was positive. In late 2018, November and December, as many of you know, because you participated, we did a survey of Montpelier residents 50 and older to learn whether there was need and interest for a village in Montpelier. Typically, villages provide both practical support services and social opportunities. But as we did our research, we learned that Montpelier is somewhat unique because we've got this fabulous senior center that already fills much of the need for social opportunities that most villages offer, because they don't have fabulous senior centers that offer those opportunities. So in creating the survey, we focused more on the volunteer-based practical support services aspect, and we limited the questions about social opportunities, that things that MSAC does not offer. We finished analyzing our data in March of 2019, and we determined that there was indeed both need and interest, and also that there was strong interest in volunteering. About 10 services rose to the top that people said they would need either now or in the future. And we decided to focus on 6 services with the highest level of need. And those broke into 3 categories. The first category was opportunities for socialization between members who have shared interests. That could be outdoor activities like taking a walk or getting together for ice cream or coffee or playing games or just hanging out. And there were 2 of those opportunities that people who were interested in: buddies, which is one-on-one, and the other is informal get-together with small groups of village members. The second category was personal support and practical assistance that's provided by volunteers. And there were 3 of those. Handy person services that can be safely provided by volunteers was way at the top of identified needs. Seasonal chores like yard cleanup or raking or wood stacking, and rides. And the third category was referrals to the screen service providers that I mentioned for things that volunteers can't do. Although most villages are freestanding nonprofit organizations, once we had that information, we began to wonder whether creating a new membership organization with all that involves would be viable here, at least in part because of the existence of MSAC. So we began to talk about whether it might make more sense to create a village within MSAC. A year ago, in November 2019, our work group submitted a detailed proposal to JANA to expand MSAC's offerings to include those 6 home-based services and social opportunities that the survey had identified as having the greatest demand. And I should say that transportation was included in our proposal, but has been taken off the table for now, because you may have heard that there is an on-demand microtransit pilot called My Ride that's going to be happening in Montpelier soon. Our thought was that this would create a component at MSAC that's essentially a senior center without walls, and that once the structure was in place and the volunteers had been recruited and things were running smoothly, additional services could easily be added. Jan has been very supportive of the concept, and we're very grateful to her. But because of limits on the city's budget and staffing, it wasn't something that MSAC could take on a year ago. But we did keep meeting with Jana, and the discussion kept going. And then the big turning point was the award of the AmeriCorps position to MSAC. And as you heard from Andrew, he started in that position in September and really hit the ground running, and I would say has changed our lives for the better. So we're just at the beginning of this process, and Jan is going to talk about the many decisions that need to be made and the fact that there's a lot of work to do, but I think I can say for our whole work group that we are pretty excited to be at this point. So Jana, over to you.
Thank you, Erica. Oh, it's so great to hear. So I know many of you are already quite familiar with the Senior Activity Center, but there are a few folks on the call who are newer. And for their benefit, as well as the fact that we're recording this, I'm going to give a little more background that may be redundant for many of you. So most of you know that we're a division of city government, and along with the Parks and Recreation divisions, we make up a community services department. So the Senior Center and Parks and Trees and Recreation became integrated just a few years ago. And there's a lot of exciting ways that we've started working together, sharing staff, and working to increase the amount of intergenerational connection that we provide through services and programs. And it's nice to see some city colleagues on the call. Thanks for joining. So as a part of city government, we benefit from having the support of other aspects of the city and have good relationships with colleagues across the board, and communicate and interact with them a lot. So they'll be learning more about the village through us, and we're glad about that. We do receive funding from the city taxpayers. It's about a fifth of our revenue. And we seek lots of other kinds of funding, including from other towns. We have 6 supporting towns. And I'd like to also share the mission of the Senior Activity Center for those who might not be familiar. Our mission is to enhance the quality of life for older adults in the Montpelier area through opportunities that develop physical, mental, cultural, social, and economic well-being in a welcoming and flexible environment. And you can see how, based on what Erica described already, our mission and what we do dovetails really well with what village models aspire toward. So when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, many of you know that we have, and we've tried to recreate during the pandemic some of this, but we have a really diverse and affordable offering of classes, meals that happen on site as well as through home delivery. We host health clinics, and the one-on-one foot care clinics are still happening. We have a myriad of drop-in groups where folks gather for various topics. When it's safe, we have a van and we do trips out in the region, across the state, and even up to Montreal and occasionally internationally. Our facility is a real gathering hub for many people in the community, and folks meet new friends there. Folks gather to play games, to borrow books and DVDs from the Savoy archive, to use the computers, and lots more. So it tends to be a great hub. And it supports in so many ways healthy aging for the greater community, and lifelong learning and social connection. So yes, social connection is key, and reducing isolation is even more important now than it was before the pandemic began. So going back to our mission, the last phrase of the mission is something that's really stood out to me recently, because it's flexible environment. And this is really key, because as we're needing to pivot to do so much outside of our facility, it's really emphasizing what Erica already referred to as a senior center without walls. And that's already been something we've been focusing on in terms of offering programs in other offsite locations. But now the time has come for us to start thinking about how we can support people flexibly at home. And this is really a new direction for us. Other than the home delivered meals that we've been providing for many years through great partnerships, serving people where they are at home and supporting successful aging in place, and the connection that people need, especially during the pandemic, is really a timely matter for us. So just to bring those of you up to speed who might not be familiar, we have continued our home delivered meals, and we've pivoted to offer a couple dozen online weekly classes this fall, and that will continue in the winter. It's a great time to sign up if you haven't heard about it yet. We're also excited. Andrew's going to tell you more about what's been happening with the Village Initiative already, but that's been a big priority for us this fall. Another priority is planning more intergenerational connections. So we've been talking with colleagues in other departments and the high school and lots of other community partners about how we can do that well. The involvement that we have with the village, as was mentioned, goes back to when many of us talked together at that conference at the Elks Club with AARP and others. And it was exciting to me when we were approached by the village work group as they were starting to do their grassroots work to help promote a survey that they put out that they described. And then after the results came out, we were able to be a part of the conversations with several community partners, including Sustainable Montpelier and Onion River Exchange and others. And so it was exciting for me when we got the proposal from the work group about a year ago, and our advisory council received it with great enthusiasm. They easily understood and agreed how well the goals of the village work group match our mission, and also were well in keeping with results of our annual survey from that previous spring in terms of what the community demand is becoming. So it was also clear to all of us that in order to kind of fulfill the entire set of goals of the village, we would need to think really carefully about what our capacity is. We have as many of you know, we have a limited small staff, and so some resources would need to be creatively explored to figure out how we could bring this on board. So we learned about an exciting grant opportunity just before the pandemic hit. I think it was in January. And we learned that the feds were supporting a great funding opportunity, and we briefly considered applying for it. It was going to offer us a lot of capacity, but it became clear it was going to be a little bit too much to pull off in a short amount of time. And we decided to pursue the new AmeriCorps position to replace a previous Vista role that we had before Andrew's time. And so the village work group worked with us to design Andrew's position, which also supports our feast program. And we were able to partner with the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board to establish that position and fund it in a way that's more, it's a step toward the possibility in the future of having an employee in a way that we could bring on more capacity without bringing on as much cost. So we were so excited to meet Andrew during the interview process, and he's been a great match for the program and a great addition to our team. So here we are, we're in the pandemic, we're bringing this initiative into fruition. And I think it's especially timely in the city as across the world, more people are coming forward wanting to volunteer. Folks are recognizing what a risk social isolation is now. It's always been a risk to health, and there's more conversations happening about that. And technology as a means for people to connect is becoming increasingly important. We're excited that Andrew's able to help address some of that need as well. And we're working really closely with our partners at the Central Vermont Council on Aging, including Jean and Luke and others, to help establish more support to people for technology and social connection. So going back to our connection with the city, I'm pleased that we had great support at city leadership level. And I can mention that the goals of the Village Initiative really dovetail well with some of the city priorities, including intergenerational connection, health and wellness. And it's also been an important part of our initiative as we've started to explore what steps come next to recognize that we don't want to reinvent the wheel for anything that exists already in the community, but we want to collaborate as strongly as possible with other partners and identify where there are gaps in service and determine what we can fill in gaps and how we can work with partners to fill the gaps. So we're really excited about strengthening a lot of the partnerships that we have already and potentially creating new ones. One of them that's becoming a lot stronger already is our relationship with the Montpelier Public Schools. And Andrew is going to mention a little bit more about that. So there are a lot of decisions we still need to make. And it's probably going to take some time to figure things out. And we hope that you'll be a part of helping us explore the questions and make the decisions over time. A lot of people have asked us, are there going to be fees to participate? Or is it going to be included in membership? Well, so far, everything that we're doing is not coming at a cost to those participating. And whether that changes in the future, we're not sure. We've actually waived our membership dues so far this year, and we'll need to bring them back next year, and we'll explore what's included in that. Folks have asked us what the Montpelier Village can provide to non-residents. And there could be shifts in this in the future, but for the time being, we're limiting anything that's an at-home service, such as helping with outdoor chores like stacking wood. We're going to designate that for Montpelier only, but there's a lot that we're offering, including technology assistance and wellness calls to our members. And we're doing that regardless of the town of residence. And we'll keep exploring this. And we hope that in the future, we can be a part of the entire region being able to develop more supportive at-home services. Another question is, what software database are we going to use? There's some proprietary village software out there, and we're having conversations with others who use those databases to determine what might be a good fit for us. So we're not purchasing anything like that yet. Have also been asking, are we going to create a permanent employee position for this? Well, many of you probably know that the city has a freezing on hiring right now. We're holding some vacancies, and there's really quite a financial crisis. So we're not able to make any promises about the future, but it's something that we will explore as time goes on. And we do feel confident the city will recover from the pandemic financial crisis eventually. So there are a lot of exciting questions we're going to explore about priorities. And another one that we've been talking about is, does the village sort of pilot become a service of the senior center, or might we even rebrand the entire senior activity center as a village? There have been some interesting ideas for rebranding the senior activity center and renaming it. And it might be timely for us to consider what the village initiative means to our operations in the coming year or two as we explore that. So as you're hearing from others and me, this is an exciting developing stage, and we're excited to see what happens next. We're excited to have the community members come on board to start participating in it. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts, your questions, and I'm just really enthusiastic about this. And thanks for participating tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew next, and he is going to tell you more about the nuts and bolts of what's happening right now. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks so much, Shanna. Thank you, Erica. I always enjoy hearing about the village model and talking about it, because it just makes intuitive sense. Hearing about our situation in Montpelier and the need for it, and really the appetite for it. And it's always I always find these conversations invigorating. So happy to carry those on. So as was mentioned, I started in September, and hit the ground running, which is what I prefer to do. And so started off offering outdoor chores to folks. To the pandemic, has obviously greatly influenced our offerings. What we've kind of looked into doing, and so we have only done things either remotely or outdoors to start with. So this fall, I went around and did some gardening help, did some raking, helped stack some wood, clean someone's gutter, just areas where, I was more than happy to do it. It was, no big deal for, luckily I'm, have the energy for it and happy to do it. But, for some other folks who maybe one person had a bum knee, they're getting operated on, and normally they do all their wood stacking themselves, but this year they couldn't. And so opportunities like that have, with the community, have really been a huge highlight of my time thus far. In addition to the chore piece, we've worked with partnership, as has been mentioned, we've worked in partnership with Central Vermont Council on Aging to try to do undertake wellness calls to our members. We've started that. The calls have started being made last month, and we're doing starting with one-time check-in calls to all of our membership, starting with those 80 and above, and then we'll work our way through all of MSAC's membership. And I know we have a few callers, volunteer callers on the call now, so appreciate all that they've done to make that a reality. But we really, we're really brainstorming ways we can continue to reach the community and have people feel connected to the community in this very uncertain time. Related to that, because everything has become all moved online, we want to develop. We don't want technology to be a barrier for connection and for community. And so we are, I've started to undertake assisting with technical questions that people have. If they just have questions on Zoom, how to do Zoom, everything is run by Zoom these days, or they want to just learn whatever question they may have. We want to help them in that endeavor. And we couldn't do that without the partnership of Central Vermont Council on Aging again. And we're in conversations with a group of students from Montpelier High School to try and get their involvement as well. And we really feel strongly that the intergenerational aspect of this is a huge strength that we want to bring to our village. We want our village to be ideally to be reflective of the community at large. We feel that's going to make, the more we can reflect the community at large, the stronger and more sustainable we feel this village will be. So we're really excited about the conversations that we have taken place with Montpelier Public Schools, and look forward to those continuing. As was previously discussed, we don't want to, we don't think that our village is going to be able to solve everything or should undertake everything. We really want to understand where the community needs are and where the gaps might exist, and so we can help fill those gaps. So we have had already a number of conversations with community partners. As Erica mentioned, the My Ride with Green Mountain Transit and Sustainable Montpelier Coalition, for some villages, transportation requests are 3/4 of all the services they provide. But that's not going to be necessarily the case with ours. There is a community asset already in place, being developed, set to launch next year, and so we want to promote that. We don't want to overlap and make do anything redundantly if something's already operating successfully in our community. So we want to help fill the gaps. So we've been in a lot of conversations with community partners about what they offer, what they see as needs, and then that has helped with our thinking about best ways to proceed going forward. So one piece that Erica had mentioned on, we have that great data from the survey that was done. And so we know what the needs are. Some of you, responded to that. We know that there are a number of needs within the community, and we want to help develop ways where we can address those needs, while also recognizing that things have changed. The pandemic has turned everything upside down, and we want to be able to adapt to where people are today. And so we just pull up one thing here. And as was previously touched on, every community is going to be unique, has its own advantages, disadvantages. And so we really want to meet our community, the Montpelier community, where they are, and provide support. for them. And this is something that, as Jana mentioned, is very much in development. We don't pretend to have all the answers. We have a fantastic foundation has been laid by members of the Montpelier Village Work Group who you heard from and others. And I see my role, and I hope all of you see an opportunity as well to really build on that foundation and really help help us chart this next path in this next movement, next stage of this movement, I should say, and move forward into the future. And one of those things that we're going to touch upon is the need for, we really want the active and working steering committee. And so we're going to be, I'll be sending out a survey to everyone following the conclusion of this presentation, or it might be actually not until tomorrow or so. But we want to hear everyone, gauge your involvement, welcome you on board if you're up for it, and like I said, really help us move forward down this path together. And if there are no, actually, I think what we'll do now, because I know that was a lot of information and talking at people. I think we can open it up for questions. If people have any sort of questions for any of the people who have been introduced so far, we're happy to take those at this point in time. And you're welcome to just raise your physical hand if you do have a question, and then myself or someone else will be able to call on you and discuss what your question is. And if you need to unmute, and if you're on the phone, you can do so by pressing *6. And if you're on online, you can, it should be in the bottom left-hand corner. There should be a mute unmute function, and you can press that button. And I apologize, I can't see everyone at once, so. Fran.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. So from the survey, what were the 1 or 2 most important needs that it turned out people would need? The survey that was done.
Do you want me to take that one, Andrew?
Sure.
Well, handy person services was at the very top, and I have to say I don't remember what was next, but those 6 services that I mentioned that were in our proposal, those were the ones that were at the top.
Thank you.
And I think it bears repeating that transportation was also high on the list, but as Andrew said and other people have said, because Sustainable Montpelier and GMTA are developing the MyRide program, we're going to let that get launched and get going and see if that begins to meet some of the transportation needs that people identified, and not try and duplicate the wheel.
And I'll just add that as that starts to roll out, we'll be informing the public as much as we can about the current state and how to connect with it. They've been reaching out, especially right now, to the current riders of the circulator bus. And they'll be launching the program, as I understand, more in January, and a particular outreach to seniors in the spring. But Elizabeth from Sustainable Montpelier is on the Zoom, and if she wants to add anything brief, might be beneficial to others.
Sure, thank you, Jenna. Yeah, so MyRide by GMT, formerly known as On-Demand Microtransit. This is the last time we will use the words On-Demand Microtransit. MyRide by GMT, woo! All right, we're rebranding it. Anyway, so MyRide is actually going to be replacing 3 bus routes. It will be replacing the Montpelier Hospital Hill, Montpelier Circulator, and the Capital Shuttle. And of course, the Capital Shuttle isn't running now because the legislature has not been in session for quite some time. It's been down since March. But the other 2 bus services will be changing over. And so there will be 3 vehicles running between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Saturday. So we did give an onboard survey, and we're assessing that now. There are a range of needs of current riders. Probably, I would say, just under half of them have smartphones and can use the My Ride by GMT app, which will be available mid-month, and you can actually start to use that app to reserve rides January 4th. And then there are a cohort of people who will have to use the call center, the GMT call center, in order to reserve their rides. And then we have a few people who do not have phones that we are doing outreach to in particular. We just met with the Montpelier Housing Authority today to go over again our outreach plan with that cohort. But we're really looking forward to transitioning the current riders, and then as soon as it's possible, as soon as that task is complete, to doing outreach with seniors. The one thing I want to underscore is the fact that GMT has a very strong COVID protocol. They recently dropped their number of riders from 12 to 9, in keeping with the level of COVID concern. And the wonderful thing about My Ride will be that you're not going to be on the bus typically for more than 15 minutes, which is the CDC's limit of how long you should be in contact with another person. So there are all sorts of things that they're doing right to make it safe. And hopefully by the spring, COVID will be on the downswing, and seniors will feel comfortable using the service. So any questions on that, you can private message me and I can blather further, but I think that's an overview. And unless Peter has something, Peter's on our current rider committee and has been very active in helping with this work. I guess what the one thing I want to say is that we do have a very strong group of, there's the My Ride community advisory group, and there are probably 24 people on that in that group, and then we are copying probably another now almost dozen organizations on the information of this group that meets monthly, and then they have committees which are helping on current riders, metrics, and governance. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Do just have a comment here to note, is that someone is noting here that we don't want to forget about the folks who may have already, who are not living in a home. They may have already left their home or live in some sort of a apartment or subsidized housing. And also that those older folks may not be able to volunteer, which is a really great point. And I think that it harkens back to what we all kind of spoke about a little bit about the need to kind of involve as many folks as we can in this process and really be reflective of the needs of the community. And so I think that that's a great point. We do not want to overlook any sort of segments of the population, and really want to welcome all sorts of different folks into the fold. We find that we think that will be a real strength of the village as we move forward. So certainly a good comment, an astute comment there.
May I add to that, Andrew, that the concept of your own home is wherever you live. It doesn't need to be a home that you own. It could be an apartment It's really, I think, more about people who are still living on their own and not in a congregate setting like assisted living or something like that, where they get services. So this is any home that you have is a home.
Also, I was just going to add, to make sure there's not a misunderstanding about this, that the concept of the village is not predicated on people having to volunteer as a kind of quid pro quo to get services. We recognize that there are members of the community who may be able to volunteer and help to provide services, but we also recognize that there are lots of folks for whom that won't be possible. And that's why this is a community-based, grassroots-based idea. And particularly the point that Andrew made about making it multi-generational, so that we have different groups of people to draw on to provide some of that assistance, so that the folks who need the assistance are not having to worry about, you know, some kind of trade-off or something like that.
And since you're talking about all of the components of older Vermonters who will make up the village, has there been consideration for the development of services? And I'm thinking, when you were talking about the social opportunities, for maybe some of the specialized needs for underrepresented communities, thinking in terms of when they were working on the Older Vermonters bill, they had this very generic statement about providing services to all older Vermonters. That misses some of the specific needs for our Indigenous communities, our communities of color, LGBTQ+ communities, people living with disabilities. So I would encourage us that as we think in terms of the creation of a village, that when we're looking at very specific services, that we take those kinds of nuances into consideration.
Thank you for adding that to the conversation, Keith. I really appreciate that. And as many of you are probably aware, the city's recently been strengthening a kind of somewhat recently formed social and economic justice action or advisory committee. I'm forgetting the exact name of it. But I know that they are starting to look at these similar questions as what you're describing. And I hope that we can be informed by their discussions and contributions from others in the community about how we can best create village offerings that are welcoming to many different populations and particular needs. So I would just encourage any of you, if you have specific thoughts on that in terms of our outreach, or if you notice something that we could do differently, please get in touch and share your ideas.
Yeah, Peter, and then Benjamin.
I'd just like to build on that a bit, because I was a member of the Social and Economic Justice Advisory Committee, and one of the parts of our population that we should not forget are people who are currently homeless. And this has become a very important issue, particularly during COVID. There are predictions nationwide that unless there is substantial relief package, which has not yet been passed and may not be passed until, there are going to be more homeless people, because people are going to be evicted. People are going to be forced out of their homes. So I just think that is an important point on our horizon. And the other point I'd like to make is that I hope that at some point, or maybe already, the village and MSAC are talking with the Montpelier Sustainable Montpelier CAN program, which I've been involved in also. It's very interesting, because I did a survey in the community that I lived in. I recently moved. It's very interesting that even within neighborhoods, there are sub-neighborhoods. And the sub-neighborhoods actually have a kind of organic way of looking out for each other's neighbors. It's less clear how you get the larger neighborhoods. So I was in, College Hill South, but Kent Street is the people on Kent Street really look after each other. They don't need a whole neighborhood can effort. But there are some natural, there's some natural groupings that I hope the village will be thinking of, that there may be some sub-villages or even some sub-villages. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, we've been meeting with Lauren and Tom from CAN and starting to talk about how we can reinforce each other's outreach and get word about what we're doing out to the neighborhood leaders. We've also started hosting one of their sandwich boards in front of the center, although there's not many people going to the center these days to see it, but passersby see it. And we look forward to continuing to work with them and finding ways that those smaller neighborhoods can plug in with us, and we can use them as a conduit for getting more help. And some neighborhoods are a lot more active than others, like you were saying about Kent Street neighborhoods and sub neighborhoods. So if those of you on the call aren't all familiar with CAN, we're starting to put word out, but I encourage you to check them out on their website as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. Benjamin.
I'm interested to know if an assessment has been made of potential commercial service providers in order to find out the viability of offering some kind of organized service to village members, and as well as the potential demand that you believe is there for that kind of service. And by service, I'm talking about the plumbers, electricians, carpenters, the whole list that you are conscious of.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the short answer is not yet. No sort of outreach has been done at this point in time. But that is definitely going to be something that we look forward to doing as things evolve. So certainly more to come on that front as things progress.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that in all the other villages that we looked at, that was a very common component with a fairly good amount of participation from local service providers. I think we're in a little bit of a difficult spot right now with the pandemic. It would be a little hard to do that kind of outreach to potential service providers. And we've been paying attention to the way in which Front Porch Forum has been functioning in that capacity, in that a lot of people seek and provide recommendations through Front Porch Forum. And I think we're going to look closely at how that's been happening and with what degree of success, so that we can learn more about how that might work. Obviously, in those cases, there's not a question of a discount being offered. It's just the assurance or the reassurance that somebody else says this person is a good person and did good work, and you can trust them, and things like that, which is clearly a part of what people are looking for, is the ability to connect with somebody who's going to provide the service they need without getting into a scam or a risk or something like that. So it's definitely one of the more complicated areas that we can, we may not be able to put a lot of effort into right now during the pandemic.
And I would add that at least what the work group envisioned is that there would be a pretty rigorous screening process. So there would be background checks and probably asking for several references, finding out if people are licensed. So this is something that would take some work, I think, to get it up and running, but it's also possible that that screening process is something that could be done by a volunteer committee, for example. So it wouldn't all fall on Andrew or a staff person.
May I just comment in relation to that?
Absolutely.
Okay. To my mind, that really is one of the most critical dimensions to this whole project, that being able to stay in one's home for people who become unable to perform those chores themselves. I think Front Porch Forum, the model that it represents, is inadequate, given the anonymity of everyone involved, so that having sufficient scrutiny of individuals who could be providing those services is essential. And the second point I would offer is that while having a discount may be appealing, I think more importantly is obtaining qualified people who would not particularly be interested in philanthropy, and that most of the people involved in this, I would think, participating in the village, would have sufficient means to pay market rate for good service, and that that's really much less a factor than the facility of having a centralized screening and communication process.
Yeah, we appreciate those points, Benjamin. It's still early in the conversation. We certainly want to go about this, methodically and carefully, and really make sure that we're as thorough as possible. But financial pressures are going to be different for different members, so we also want to be cognizant of that too. But your points are certainly well taken.
One last point in that, Benjamin, as we look at, I think it would be something we would look at more closely, but that Village to Village, the national group, they have not only the information sharing, but they have lots of models of different forms and tools and things. So when we come, and some of the work we've done have looked at how other villages have done that, what kind of forms have they used, applications. So we can even, and we would probably reach out to some of the actual villages, see what their experience has been, and balance some of those factors. If it's too onerous, it may be hard in a smaller community. Participate. You may have good, competent contracting folks who are busy enough with the work they have, so you have some of those challenges. But there are some information sources out there as we look to structure it beyond just whatever individual thoughts we may have. But some of the points you're raising are some of the threads of and topics have come up as we've discussed that idea.
Yeah, Mary Colleen.
Hello. This is more of a comment of somebody that was here in Montpelier for a couple of years, and I've been gone for 5 years and just have moved back a few months ago. 3 of those years that I was gone, I worked in a continuum of care facility, and well, that's a good option for a lot of people. One of the things that I experienced people telling me that they missed so much was being in the community, being in their own community, and also the intergenerational piece, that, and so I'm so excited to, see this community really embracing, that aging in place model as an alternative, and really love, I can't tell you how excited I am to hear all of this and all that you've done in this, time that I've been gone. And also to be so focused on that intergenerational piece. I think that's so huge for integrating how many different ways we can integrate each other and back into a community, and how uplifting that is. And I just want to thank you all for all this work that's been done since, you've been busy, that's for sure.
Thanks, Mary Colleen.
I don't want to miss Daryl's comment that's been happening in the chat room about how, and I want to be really clear, and I agree with the direction I hope that Daryl was going in, that as we look at those needs, that we reach out to and include those underrepresented communities so that we are truly hearing their voice, hearing them define their needs, and hearing from them what would be the respectful and appropriate manner in which you reach out with services. Thank you, Daryl.
Yeah, thank you, Keith and Daryl, both. I'll be following up with you, and I've taken some notes on that question and the comments. Thank you.
I just like to say kudos to Elizabeth. The My Right group has done a fantastic job of reaching out to the current riders of those routes, most of whom are people who don't have cars, many of them don't have homes, and not only has it been fantastic for them to be heard, and to feel that they are a part of this. I mean, Elizabeth has some wonderful stories about the dialogues that they've had in interviewing them on the buses. Elizabeth and her group went on the buses and talked to those people. That's what you have to do. You can't expect them to take time out of their lives, which are so full of stress, to attend a Zoom meeting. They're not going to be here. We've got to go where they are.
Yeah, that's well said, Peter. Rachel.
When thinking of aging in place, did the group talk at all about like what age are we looking at? Because when I think of homelessness, I know there are older individuals who are homeless, but what I'm seeing in Montpelier is that many are not older. And so I'm wondering, what can you define or give us what age? Is age a factor?
Might I say something about that? You know, I think that's one of the many conversations that is yet to be had. The village model is directed at older people, however you define older. And, you know, I don't know whether Jana might have anything to say about this, but I think once again, you know, we're very aware that there are issues of capacity, and in the same way that things might start in Montpelier and then grow, I guess our thinking was that things would start with the older population, and who knows if it's possible, could expand to younger people. Jana, do you have anything you want to say about that?
Sure, I'll just add that we're primarily, when we talk about older adults or seniors in our senior activity center, we're usually referring to age 50 and up, although increasingly we're offering programming and services to younger folks in many ways. So I would imagine that our efforts, at least during this pilot phase, will be focused on that age cohort. But it was really fascinating when a couple of us attended a national conference on Zoom back in October to hear that some villages across the country have oriented themselves as serving really all ages and younger families and stuff too. So that is a model that could possibly evolve here in Montpelier if that's how the community desires it to happen. At this pilot phase though, probably most of what we're going to be doing is for the membership level of the Senior Activity Center, 50 and up.
Mary Alice?
Yes, I just wanted to say, as being on some of the homelessness and housing committees and seeing some of the statistics, Washington County has one of the highest numbers of older people who are homeless around the state of Vermont. There are more older people that are homeless here in Vermont, in Washington County, than the rest of the state, including Burlington and other places. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Mary Alice. That's helpful.
Elizabeth.
So I just wanted to say that one of the things that I was just working on before this meeting was, again, looking at our strategy for doing outreach to the homeless in Montpelier. My understanding is that we have, on average, 20 to 30 people who are actually living outside. And then, of course, we have people who are housed in hopefully at Christ Church this year. I've just been kind of going over how we can best, really contact and listen to that cohort. So I'm happy to share any outreach that we do and how we do it with the Village group.
That's great to hear. Thanks.
Yeah, well, I think as this conversation demonstrates, there's certainly a lot more conversations to be had, a lot of things to figure out, and we really hope for people to be involved in that. It takes a village to build a village is a mantra that I've heard, and that's we're really taking that to heart. We certainly want to extend the offer to everyone to become involved in this. We really can't do it without community input, without community buy-in, and so we're really hoping to, and on this next step that we're going to be taking in the subsequent steps, we really hope that you will take that with us and help us chart the course. And so as I mentioned briefly, I'm just going to be following up with all of you just to send out a quick survey. It will be an electronic survey. So if you have any questions about that, or you're not sure, any sort of questions you have, definitely let me know, and I can happy to go through it with you one-on-one. But we just want to kind of invite you to be gauge your interest and hopefully hopefully invite you into the fold with us, because it's people like all of you all who's going to make this a reality. And I don't know if any of the work group has any thoughts they want to any final thoughts they want to share at this point, or take that as a no. Jana, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone again for taking the time out of your schedules tonight to participate and share helpful questions and ideas. We've taken good notes, and we look forward to being in touch with you. And please do encourage other friends and family and neighbors from this area to get in touch and get on the mailing list. Specifically for the village efforts with Andrew and the Senior Activity Center's e-list. We send out updates and announcements and news and lots of community announcements at each Sunday evening, pretty much, as well as a more robust monthly newsletter that gets attached to that. And we'd love to have you on the list to share lots more information as well, if you'd like to join.
Yeah,
Polly.
Sorry, Polly, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank again Jana for being so receptive to this. I mean, it's a big undertaking, and we are just so happy to have this partnership with MSAC and think it's really is the way forward. So thank you for listening to us, being open-minded, and taking this on and getting Andrew on board.
Of course, it's a pleasure.
I just wanted to say that I'm so grateful for the tenacity and endurance of the original group who've pulled through and are continuing to work, and for finding such wonderful partner in MSAC and in Jana and her team. I just admire everyone's work because it takes all of us to build a really great web of community. And I see you doing that. It makes me very proud of all of us, and especially of you. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Brandon, did you have something to say?
Okay, I am.
It's Renee. No, I'm just, most of you on the call don't know who I am, but I'm a newbie on the advisory council with Dana, and just learning about all this. And I was really interested in this particular topic today, which is why I joined on the call tonight. So I'm more just in the background listening and learning. Thank you. And thank you for all that you've done.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Renee.
Fran.
Yeah, I just want to say, people have talked about intergenerational, they've talked about younger people, they've talked about older people, they've talked about people with money, people without money. I think at some point a decision is going to have to be made as to whom the village is going to be serving. And whatever that decision is, that's okay, but it has to be clear who we want to serve as a village. So that's just what I wanted to say. I mean, otherwise sure, there are younger people. To me, at the senior center, having people in their 50s being considered older, I could be their parent. So to me, those are younger people. But then you've got younger than that. You've got people in their 40s and 30s. You've got younger people who are just out of high school. You've got kids. You've got people of every age. And I think a decision has to be made, whatever that decision is, to whom we're going to serve.
Thanks, Fran.
I would like to second that comment.
Yeah, certainly a good point, and I think part of how we're gonna further develop this, like I said, is with people coming on board and really helping us steer the ship. So yeah, good point, both of you.
And I just want to say that if this idea intrigues you and you'd like to get involved, know that there are so many different ways that you can get involved, and it isn't necessary to take on everything. Each of us in the working group kind of ended up doing a little bit of specialization as we went along, kind of focusing on certain things. So if there's something in particular that really gets you excited, make sure you let us know, so that as those things start to come together, we can identify folks who particularly want to work on one thing. I mean, if it's transportation, or if it's the service providers, or if it's reaching out to younger people, all those different tasks and threads that we're going to have to weave together can be something that you can focus on, or you can be get your involvement where you most want to put your time.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. Unless anyone else has anything else they would like to add, which they're welcome to do, I think that's a pretty good place to leave it.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, and thanks for your work.